This is second in row to the previous talk we had on Muslim Commonwealth, the prospects and the idea and the prospects. What we're going to be discussing today is the idea of the Muslim Commonwealth and the prospects and the way forward, or more particularly in this particular talk. Now, the way forward has to be first addressed based upon understanding from the previous talk the concept of or the happenings that are taking place on the planet. After the creation of nation states, what we are seeing now is the emergence of monolithic governments within these nation states. And the reason is simple. And the reason is that to control a population of the size that inhabits this earth, of 7.6 billion people, and the nation states numbering about 183, and with some stretch of imagination may number 200, we will see the creation of monolithic governments in all these 200 or 183 plus nation states, which will devolve into a club that will govern the population of the planet. Now, this is not being prophetic. This is not a prophecy. This is a real-time saga which is unfolding, and we are witnessing it before us. What is the purpose of this entire saga which is unfolding? It's simple. That the club that will come into being, which is already there in many ways, will seize all factors of production: land, labor, capital, enterprise. These four factors of production will become, therefore, captive to about 200 people. And that goes against the grain of human civilization, human rights, and certainly against the grain of the Islamic ideology, which allows the liberty to man to exist in a state of equality with another. So, starting from 1774 to date, we are seeing a gradual process whereby you are going to be witnessing a globe which will be managed without the fundamental requirements of justice, be it social justice, economic justice, material justice. It'll be a world that will be in captivity, and that, in essence, is what is being portrayed as one government for the entire planet. The one government for the entire planet, if it were based on justice, if it were just, if it had allowed equal opportunity, it would have been a welcome thing. But that is not what is intended or is apparently being pursued. So, this will be a form of deceptive communism, for the lack of a nomenclature term to define where the world is being taken to. Let's move on to the unfolding of what is happening. What we see further in the demerits of such a saga is the laws that will govern the planet, that are governing various areas on the planet or nation states. Because the emergence of monolithic governments in nation states in effect acknowledge this new form of slavery which is coming about. This has happened because of the introduction of a concept of superpowers. When you have a god who is dead, then you have a society that leans on its own strength and presumes itself to play God, whether it is the god of money, the god of labor, the god of enterprise, or the god of land, state. This is the worst form of human right abuse that can inflict mankind. Therefore, the idea of the Muslim Commonwealth to establish equitable justice across the board is fundamental. And this particular talk we hope to address is intended to examine the way forward. The way forward essentially requires a model to come into existence, to be in place. As I have said in my previous talk, for any nation state to be beneficial for its population, it is fundamental that an economic destination and a social destination are clearly identified, and a roadmap there towards in tandem is also made public. It's open. What this enables is the legislation of laws that provide equal opportunity to all. In a state of welfare without any particular bias for any segment of society. For instance, if you look at monarchy, it inevitably always comes into place with military backing or military strength. If you look into the leadership of the clergy, it comes into being with the instilling of fear into the population. And both are in denial of the message of Islam. So, when we address a model for the Islamic Commonwealth, and we would like to create one which can be replicated for its egalitarian values, for its values for justice, then we have to essentially for identifying a social destination, take over land for usage at a cost. So no institution of the state, no corporate or legal entity, no particular person can use land without payment for it. Similarly, there cannot be captive labor. No labor can be used without adequate compensation for labor. That is again true for enterprise, that there can be no enterprise which can be monopolistic, in denial of competition. And finally, there can be no capital which can be politically linked to the medium of exchange of another nation state. Now, these are the broad contours of the ideology of Islam, which we are supposed to adopt and follow. And although we are in total denial of all these four features, it is important and pertinent that we put this on record, so that when we create a model, that model is judiciously right for the management of societies, and it is powerful enough to be replicated in the rest of the Muslim world. We have to also create a model by being the first to do it. Like our foreign policy, which is reactive, we cannot be following the earthworm concept as is manifest in economics, where the head moves forward and the body catches on. We have to be the ones to initiate it, and we have to be the ones to perfect it for others to replicate. in the management of societies, and the Western model, the model being practiced in the West, the model being practiced in socialist and communist areas of the world, we see that the population is certainly empowered for their basic needs and their basic welfare. And this is with an end objective of optimizing labor output. In the Islamic model, the optimization is a very welcome thing, but not without adequate compensation or fair compensation of labor. So if you have a capital which is in the captivity of another political doctrine, then the compensation of labor becomes inadequate, and therefore it breeds all forms of evil in any social environment. Then it is also a question of value exchanges. When your capital is in captivity, your value exchange is deformed because you're not getting adequate compensation for the natural resources which you've been endowed with. Similarly, we have the question of the evolutionary process in material technology. That again gets impaired because the competitive edge gets compromised. And the land, wherever there is a monolithic government in existence, automatically becomes captive real estate. So in denial of all these four evils, the model which we need to create has to be based in denial of all this. And that is the Islamic model. And that is a just model, even if you do not want to brand it with Islam or link it with Islam. It is a just model which enables the global population to exercise its right over the Commonwealth of nature which is available to them. So the fundamental thing we need to resist, counter, and completely set aside is the emergence of monolithic governments in nation states. Pakistan has been no exception. From 1947 to date, we have had monolithic governments with frills and fanfare promoting deception for what we actually are and how we are actually being governed. I will sum up this entire talk on the basis of, for the way forward, on the basis of what ought to be done. What ought to be done is the creation of an indigenous model within. We have to forget about what the current world order or the political forces that inflict us internationally and create our own model. This model has to free land, has to adequately compensate labor by world standards, has to have capital that is aligned to a tangible, and has to have absolute freedom of enterprise. Let there be no two opinions about the fact that if there is going to be a turnaround for this economy, it will essentially come from the business community, it will come from the community of entrepreneurs, it will come from the community of industrialists that will bring about value or add value to our asset base. It is only a question of engineering your own laws, implementing them. Governance, therefore, has to be a mandated exercise, a mandate given by the people to servants who are supposed to deliver. And that rests on an equitable and judicious set of laws where the status is amply clear. So the way forward is just this, and the time is right now. Thank you.